Picture this: France, late 1700s. King Louis XVI is on the throne, living it up in the magnificent palace of Versailles with his queen, Marie Antoinette. They're throwing lavish parties, wearing wigs the size of small dogs, and generally having a grand old time. Meanwhile, outside the palace gates, the rest of France isn't. France was broke. Like, seriously broke. A big reason for this was helping you guys, America, with your little revolution against the British. You're welcome. But this, plus years of extravagant spending by the monarchy, left the royal piggy bank completely empty. So what's a king to do? Tax the people, of course. But here's the kicker. French society was split into three groups, or estates. The first estate was the clergy, the church folks. The second estate was the nobility, the fancy lords and ladies. And the third estate? Well, that was basically everyone else. We're talking peasants, city workers, lawyers, doctors. 97% of the entire population. And guess who paid pretty much all the taxes? Yep, the third estate. The clergy and nobility? They were mostly exempt. Doesn't seem fair, does it? To make matters worse, the weather decided to join the party. A series of bad harvests meant the price of bread, the staple food for most French people, skyrocketed. People were hungry, broke, and getting seriously angry. They were looking at the king and queen, hearing stories of Marie Antoinette's alleged "let them eat cake" comment, which she probably never actually said, but it made for a great headline, and thinking, hey, something's not right here. Desperate for cash, King Louis decided to call a meeting of the Estates General, which was kind of like a French parliament that hadn't met in 175 years. The plan was to get everyone to agree on new taxes, but the third estate had other ideas. They were tired of being outvoted by the other two estates, who always ganged up on them. They said, no more. We represent the people of France. And on a tennis court of all places, they took an oath, the famous tennis court oath, swearing they wouldn't stop until they had written a new constitution. They declared themselves the National Assembly, the true government of France. The revolution was officially on. The people of Paris, hearing rumors that the king was going to send the army to crush the new assembly, got nervous. They needed weapons to defend themselves. And where was the biggest stash of weapons and gunpowder in Paris? A medieval fortress and political prison called the Bastille. On July 14, 1789, an angry mob stormed the Bastille. It was a bloody, chaotic mess, but they took it. This event was huge. It was a symbolic victory over the king's power and showed everyone that the people meant business. To this day, July 14th is France's national holiday, like their 4th of July. With Paris in full-blown revolution, the National Assembly got to work. They wrote the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. It was a game-changing document, declaring that all men were born and remain free and equal in rights, liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. This was radical stuff. They abolished the special privileges of the nobility and clergy. The old system was crumbling, but the king and queen were still hanging out in Versailles. So, in October, a massive group of Parisian women, furious about the price of bread, marched 12 miles in the rain all the way to Versailles. They demanded bread and forced the royal family to move back to Paris, where the people could keep a close eye on them. The king was now basically a prisoner in his own capital. Things got even crazier. The royal family tried to escape France in disguise, but they were recognized, captured, and brought back to Paris in shame. This was the final nail in the coffin for the monarchy's reputation. It was clear the king couldn't be trusted. European countries like Austria and Prussia started getting nervous. They didn't want these revolutionary ideas spreading. So, they declared war on France, hoping to restore the king to power. This kicked off a new, more radical and terrifying phase of the revolution, the Reign of Terror. A powerful group called the Jacobins, led by a guy named Maximilien Robespierre, took control. Robespierre was a man on a mission to protect the revolution from its enemies, both foreign and domestic. And his favorite tool for the job? The guillotine. The guillotine became the symbol of the revolution. It was seen as an efficient and humane way of executing people. And boy, did they execute people. King Louis XVI was put on trial for treason and, you guessed it, guillotined. A few months later, Marie Antoinette met the same fate. But it didn't stop there. Anyone suspected of being an enemy of the revolution could be arrested and sent to the chopping block. Neighbors spied on neighbors. A wrong word could get you killed. Over 17,000 people were officially executed, and thousands more died in prison. It was a period of intense paranoia and bloodshed. Eventually, people got tired of all the killing. Robespierre, the man who had led the terror, became its final victim. His fellow revolutionaries, fearing they'd be next, turned on him and sent him to the guillotine he had used on so many others. After the terror, France was a mess. The government was unstable, and the wars were still going on. The country needed a strong leader to restore order. And right on cue, a brilliant, ambitious, and relatively short young general stepped onto the stage. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1799, Napoleon staged a coup d'état, a swift seizure of power, and effectively ended the French Revolution. He would go on to crown himself emperor, conquer most of Europe, and completely reshape the continent. But that's a story for another video. So, what did the French Revolution actually achieve? It was chaotic, violent, and went in directions no one could have predicted. But it completely transformed France and the world. It toppled a centuries-old monarchy, championed the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and showed that ordinary people could rise up and change their destiny. It was the messy, bloody birth of the modern world. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this super simplified history, do us a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Let us know in the comments what other historical events you'd like us to super simplify. See you next time.